So, guess what we're talking about today? We're talking about Paul. Spoiler alert. So we'll be mostly in Acts chapter 21 today. You know what? I can take this off, right? Oh, sorry. It's just so comfortable.
Sorry,
you forget it's on. It's so comfortable. I enunciate a lot better and I project a lot more.
Yeah. I mean,
you ever find like you start yelling when you take off, you feel like you're yelling a lot more because you're just trying to get past that mask. Anyways.
As long as you're 6 feet away from people.
So they want us to share a funny prediction that we said or heard that hasn't come to pass. That's how they want us to start this class off.
Y2K.
Y2K.
Oh my gosh. Okay, so
so
my father, I consider my father to be a very rational person. And I'll never forget, on January 30th, 1999, he was like, my mom's gonna share, he goes, Sherry, maybe we should go buy a couple gallons of water. Because he was like, oh, this is bupkis or whatever, because he knows a lot about computers and stuff like that, and he heard a lot about computers, and oh, this is, malarkey and yada, yada, yada. And on January 30th, he's like, maybe we should go buy a couple gallons of water.
just in case. Yeah.
So, yeah, that one was fun. Mine was, I don't know, there's been a lot of predictions that have never come to pass, and there's some that have, funny, but in weird ways. Like, have you ever said, I'd really like to listen to a song, and then you turn on the radio and that's the song that's playing? That feels weird. We know a lot about our what are they, fortune tellers, how good they're at that, or your sign and what that means. I think personal favorite was 2020 is going to be better than 2019. Anybody start January 1st thinking that?
I missed that one.
Or better yet, when I was in March, I was like, oh, well, the summer's going to be better than the spring, or the winter, or it'll be, September will come around, we'll have whatever,
It can't get any worse.
Yeah, that's right. And it keeps.
Yeah, keeps snowballing.
You gotta, and at the end of the day, it's just, I think we're all getting better at trusting. I hope so. If not, we're all going crazy. So then there's this weird question, and he says, I'll take the third option. So I don't like this. So I'm going to give you all three options because I don't like the whole trick question thing. So the question is would you rather know when you will die or how you will die? And then the third option is neither. And what do y'all think? Neither? When or how?
Neither.
Neither? I think it would drive me
Because if
crazy.
you knew how, then you would try to avoid whatever that was. And that wouldn't help.
There's a lot of time travel movies that predicated on that, right?
Yes, there is.
And Jesus tells us, somebody turn to Acts 6:34, if you would, real quick, and then just read us that one verse, because it's kind of, I think it's a good, because I think all of us are trying to look into the future and seeing what the heck is going to happen, because
What book?
Matthew.
Oh, Matthew.
Chapter 6, verse 34. This one has been on my heart a lot since, trying to find it out.
Therefore, do not worry about tomorrow, for tomorrow will worry about itself. Each day has enough trouble on its own.
So today we're going to talk about a little bit, we're going to look at the prophecy that Jesus gave Ananias in regards to Paul's conversion on the road to Damascus. And we're going to look at, hindsight being 2020, we're going to look about how that came to fruition and whether or not it was true or not. In Romans chapter 9, verse 3, it says, For I could wish that I myself were accursed and cut off from Christ for the sake of my brothers, my kinsmen, according to the flesh. So when I read this, do you think Paul knew how or when he was going to die? Because Paul's story is kind of tragic, right? The martyrdom is tragic in and of itself. But to me, when I read this, it seems like he wasn't afraid of death so much that he was afraid of someone missing out.
Mm-hmm.
That makes sense. He talks about, I would rather be accursed than somebody else, I'd rather be cursed and somebody else get to heaven than vice versa. Is it vice versa or vice versa? I say vice
versa. I don't know.
Because I live in the Midwest, so I say kitty corner instead of catty corner, so.
It's kitty corner.
It's kitty corner. Is it though? Ask a Texan.
I know, they're just wrong.
Is it kitty corner or catty corner?
I always call it catty corner.
See?
There you go.
Is it pecan or pecan?
Oh. Pecan. And you look it up in the dictionary.
Yeah, so I had a friend of mine at a place I worked in Indianapolis, and I say pecan because I'm kind of from there. I'm a weird diagram of stuff.
Pecan is urinal.
Okay, so you see that white bucket thing? This is what he told me. You see that white bucket thing? What do you call that? You don't call it a trash con. And this old boy from Alabama, I was like, my gosh, because I did the pecan. I was like, that's what the doctor tells you to go do, when you've been pulled over or whatever. But or whenever you have physical. But then he came back with that one. I was like, oh, that's a good one.
Yeah.
So.
But if you look it up in the dictionary, pecan is the preferred thing to say.
Is it? I don't know. Pecan pie sounds
Well,
terrible.
maybe it depends on which dictionary.
Yeah, maybe there's a Texas dictionary or
Mhm.
a Texas rhyming dictionary. So
That's kind of like Lubbock.
So find out
I
again.
mean, how do you spell
I'm
it?
really sorry. I go off on tangents, and this class is mostly tangentially explained. Talking about Lubbock again. I was in Indianapolis at the same job, and we next to my office there was a call center kind of just to get customers because I worked for a floor planning company at the time. And they go, he's like, I got to call someplace called Lubbock. I was like, where's Lubbock? I was like, I've never heard of Lubbock. He goes, oh, it's in Texas. I go, you mean Lubbock? He goes, is that how you say it? I'm like, yes. And I was like, how many calls have you made? He goes, I don't know, like 20. I was like, have you called Lubbock every time? He goes, yes. I'm like, you're never going to get a customer.
Nope. Yeah, you
I
better
was like,
pronounce it
Lubbock's a
right.
very hometown, homer kind of place. Like, you're not going to get anything.
If you can't pronounce the name of the town, you're out. Forget it. Hang up on that
like,
one.
Lubbock. I was like, all right. But anyways, so we're going to talk a little. So I'll go first because I want you all to stay in Acts chapter 21. I'll go to Acts chapter 9 real quick because I want to read this prophecy Ananias got. Because we have, the Saul, why do you persecute me? And then we're going to go to 9:15 through 16 here. And I guess this is not a red letter. I thought this was a red letter Bible, but I guess not. Because these could technically be in it. Said, chapter 9. Apparently 9 looks like a 3 to me. Maybe it is a red letter Bible. I thought it was. And lo and behold, it is. All right, cool. Says, but the Lord said to Ananias, go, this man is my chosen instrument to proclaim my name to the Gentiles and their kings and to the people of Israel. I will show him how much he must suffer for my name. Well, that's nice. You think Ananias told Paul that? Paul what he saw? What Jesus said to him? I don't think it ever talks about whether Ananias said it or not. Do you think Ananias told him up front? Well, he said, hey, because he took him into his house and he said, oh, by the way, Jesus told me this and, good luck. Do you think Ananias told him?
You may not.
Would you tell him?
All of it.
No, not
You say, oh, you're going to go to the Gentiles?
not
And,
the attitude that I said towards Paul in the beginning there.
Right.
Because he didn't.
He was scared of him, wasn't he?
Yeah, he didn't like it.
Can you blame him? I wonder if Ananias really liked the he must suffer part.
Yeah.
Maybe he did tell him. So we're going to be in Acts chapter 21, like I said. And we're going to start in verse 10, unless y'all want to read the whole chapter. Sometimes I read the whole chapter, sometimes I don't. It just depends on how much time we have. We've got about... Church went a little long today.
It's Eddie's fault.
What? Eddie's fault?
Mm.
Well, he kind of had an announcement.
Mm.
Spoiler alert. And,
We were all there.
oh, were you all there? All right, good. We figured it out then. No spoilers. So I'll start in verse 10. And it goes, I think my verse 10 is different than his verse 10. So, after we had been there a number of days, a prophet named Agabus, that's a fun name, came down from Judea. Coming over to us, he took Paul's belt, tied his own hands and feet with it, and said, "The Holy Spirit says, in this way, the Jewish leaders in Jerusalem will bind the owner of this belt and will hand him over to the Gentiles." When he heard this, we and the people there pleaded with Paul not to go to Jerusalem. Then Paul answered, "Why are you weeping and breaking my heart? I am ready not only to be bound, but also to die in Jerusalem for the name of the Lord Jesus." When he would not be dissuaded, we gave up and said, "The Lord's will be done." How would you react to this if somebody told you this? Would you react the same way Paul did, or would you react somewhat different? It's okay to admit you would not act the same way Paul did, because I probably would. We all think we're altruistic and we're, I guess, Captain America.
Yeah.
But how would you respond? Would you respond differently?
You try to decide, okay, was that really my belt or is it somebody else's?
I was borrowing Doug.
Whose belt was I borrowing today?
That's one thing I do. Thank goodness I borrowed something else.
Yeah. But Paul just, ever since the road to his conversion, it's just, he's driven.
Yeah.
He's driven constantly. He doesn't stop. And I don't think Paul's going like, I'm just going to do what I'm told to do and go on.
I was thinking about it this morning. When we talk about the importance of Paul, and this whole quarter has been about Paul's missionary journeys and his life through the book of Acts. And I was thinking about it, and I was talking to a Catholic friend of mine, and I keep thinking about how their Pope was based on Peter, right? Like, on this rock I will build my church. And so, and then I started thinking, I'm like, who was more influential to us in the 21st century, Peter or Paul? And I'm wondering if it's Paul, because how many books of the New Testament were written by him? A lot.
And he's the one that preached to the Gentiles, and we're Gentiles.
That's right. And so I was wondering, and I almost asked him point blank, of why would you find a church on Peter when it seems like Paul has a bigger influence? Now, that's a stupid question at the end of the day, because they're all equally important, right? But I was just thinking about that the other day, and I was thinking about, we know a lot about Paul, and we put him on this pedestal, and rightfully so. And I wonder if by putting him on a pedestal, do we dehumanize him? Am I making sense? Do we almost, I want to say sanctify, which is what we do, but hero, make him this hero, and do we make him into somebody, do we forget that he's human? Kind of like what we do with Jesus, right? Because he's so perfect that, do we dehumanize Jesus? Do we dehumanize Paul? Do we forget that he's human, just like you and I? Do we have a hard time putting ourselves in his shoes? Because we shouldn't really, right? We should be able to put ourselves in that position and think about how we would respond and what we respond like Paul was doing. I would like to say I would, but half of me says I would try to avoid it at all times, but then the other half, like we talked about earlier, which is if you knew how or when you were going to die, you'd probably be kind of a fatalist and be like, well, just get it over with it. Mm-hmm. So that's how I would respond, one of two ways. I wonder what I would say differently. I don't think I'd probably be like, honestly, being a millennial, I'll probably quote some stupid comedy and move on. I'd do the big old son, we'll see you later.
Oh, well.
Anyways, or I'd probably say, good morning, Aggo. It's nice to see you too. And let's skip on down to verse 27, because he arrives in Jerusalem, which you think would be a good place for him, since there's a pretty sizable, right, strength in numbers type of place, but we're going to say that's kind of not the case. And it says, when the 7 days were almost completed, the Jews from Asia, seeing him in the temple. So were these the Jews from Jerusalem? Were these local guys or these non-local guys? So non-locals. Seeing him in the temple, so probably, we at Lubbock can understand, people from New Mexico coming in and messing up
Yeah.
the roads, right?
Stay in your own
You
state.
ever just say, man, this guy's coming up on me really quick, and then they don't have a front license plate, and you're like, oh, he's probably from Mexico. Yeah. That's why I like to give Boyd Reinhardt a hard time, because he's from Hobbs. And it says, it stirred him up, seeing in the temple, stirred up the whole crowd, laid hands on him. I guess it's not the same laid hands on that we've talked about previously.
Yeah.
Right? This is a bad laid hands on. Crying out, men of Israel, help. This is the man who is teaching everyone everywhere. So again, he was already in Asia, right? So they know him from Asia, so that's nice. He's having an impact against the people and the law in this place. Moreover, he even brought Greeks into the temple. So Greek is a euphemism for what? What's another term for a Greek? Gentile, right? He brought a Greek into the temple, or Gentile, and has defiled this holy place. For they had previously seen Trophimus, or whatever you want to say it, the Ephesian, with him in the city, and they supposed that Paul had brought him into the temple. We know this is a fun, like I said, the Bible loves to give us these little side part verses that don't give us enough information to see. Do we know anything about Trophimus?
No.
We know nothing about Trophimus. It sounds the way Luke writes this, that Trophimus, that says, moreover, he even, they had seen him. So obviously, I guess Paul didn't bring him in. And as I was studying, it said, and even if Paul had brought Trophimus, so even if Trophimus had gone with Paul, I don't know if it's by law or by tradition, the Jews should have gone after Trophimus and not Paul, because he's the Gentile, not Paul. Does that make sense? So they erred probably on two different things. One is Paul probably didn't bring him in the way it's written. To me, it sounds like Paul didn't bring him in. And second of all, even if he did have brought him in, it wouldn't have been Paul's fault in the beginning. You would not have gone after Paul to begin with. You would have gone after the other guy. Which is probably why all the locals didn't go after Paul in the first place. Anyway, it was the out of town.
Yeah.
Then all the city was stirred up. We're back in verse 30. And the people ran together. They seized Paul and dragged him out of the temple. And at once the gates were shut. As they were seeking to kill him, word came to the tribune of the cohort. What is the tribune of the cohort?
Mine says commander of the Roman troops.
Okay. Commander of the Roman troops. You cheated.
No, that's not what mine says.
I thought that was a fun term. Tribune of the cohort. And it was you said it's the Roman commander of the garrison, basically, right? Yeah. So the lead military commander of the area heard about this. And that he didn't hear exactly what happened. He just heard all Jerusalem is in confusion. So in the military, they really teach you really well how to make a big decision on little information.
Well, they didn't want to write it.
The Marines teach, yeah, you're right. The Marines teach that it's better to make a decision now based on whatever information you have than worry about it later. Worry about it and make a bet, and try to make the right one and take too much time. They're of the opinion that you get more people killed that way. So
Stop it before it gets big.
So military hasn't changed much. So all of Jerusalem was in confusion. So he took action. He was a man of action. He at once took soldiers and centurions. So he has soldiers and centurions. How many? He has multiple centurions, and how many people is a centurion over? 100. So we have multiple hundreds of soldiers. At least this is how I read this. And ran down to them. So this is fun. And when they saw the tribune and the soldiers, they stopped beating Paul. Would you stop doing whatever you're doing when you see hundreds of soldiers run towards you? So that's good. Remember, we know Paul's a Roman citizen. They don't know Paul's a Roman citizen at this point in time. He hasn't made that claim yet. So everyone, if he had made that claim at this point, everyone beating him would have been in deep doo-doo. What we're about to find out. So the Tribune came up and arrested him right there. The Tribune would have been in deep doo-doo right there for doing that to a Roman citizen, and ordered him to be bound with 2 chains. I don't understand the significance of 2 chains. What do you guys understand the significance of 2 chains? He's a rapper. I don't know if that matters.
Well, maybe they thought he could escape or something.
2 chains. He inquired. I wonder if one was to protect Paul and one was to keep Paul up. I don't know. He inquired who he was and what he had done. So he's already arrested the guy, put 2 chains on him, and now he's asking.
Right.
You know, he didn't ask. He didn't say what happened. He asked, "What did you do?" Which, as a parent of a 3-year-old, I ask that a lot, and maybe I should stop asking. It's so accusatory. So, what have you done? Some in the crowd were shouting one thing, some another. So we have a mom mentality. Nobody knows what's going on, but it's cool. We're going to do it. I think that speaks volumes to our current or to recently past events. Like I said, some people just like to be part of a group, regardless of what that group's doing. And as he could not learn the facts because of the uproar, so there was so much noise, he couldn't hear the facts. He ordered him to be brought into the barracks. I don't know the significance of bringing him into the barracks versus something else. You all know, I assume there is some significance, but he didn't bring him directly to jail unless that's the same thing. And when he came to the steps, he was actually carried by the soldiers because of the violence of the crowd. So the violence of the crowd is so in upheaval, even with hundreds of soldiers, they still had to carry him instead of walking by himself. For the mob of the people followed, crying out, "Away with him." So we've talked about what is happening to Paul. He's been arrested without cause. He was arrested without even knowing anything about the case. He was just like, well, this many people can't be wrong.
Yeah. Yeah, they can.
What do we see anything happening? Is the prophecy becoming foretold? Both Jesus and Agabus, you believe? And I mean, we're both seeing, right? We read all of the stuff that he's having to go through, and the question that is I'm supposed to pose to you, which again, I don't know if I agree this is a good question or not, but we'll see. Which of those things would you rather not have to go through? All that stuff he just went through, which of those things would you least like to go through?
Being dragged through the streets, I think that would be the least one. I wouldn't want to do that.
Okay. Because whenever they talk about being dragged through the street, there is some violence involved.
Yes.
In fact, I think it says they stopped trying to kill him. Doesn't it say that? They stopped.
I mean, they're yeah.
They stopped beating Paul. So that's good.
Yeah.
So that is that. So dragged through the streets, they're beating him as he goes.
I mean, you can get over being yelled at. You just ignore them and get over it. But you're gonna have lasting effects of being.
Somebody had a similar guy to my dad. By the time I hit teenagers, I was able to do that stare where you're like, you look at them, but you're kind of, it's just, you're like, that's par for the course.
Yeah.
But I mean, you have 5 kids, what is he gonna do? So you don't want to be dragged to the street. Anybody else? I think, and this is who I am as a person, I think I would hate my least likely thing, my least favorite thing of this whole thing was to be arrested without cause. I tell everybody, when I was brought up to be the treasurer for a non-for-profit, and they had some bad times with the previous treasurer, and they were talking to me, it's kind of like an interview, but this was volunteer kind of stuff, and I said, my entire ethos of work is to stay out of jail. I have never gotten a speeding ticket. I've never that's not to say I don't go fast. My wife says I'm the luckiest person, and I just said, We're just biding my time till I get to buy my dream fast car, and then all bets are off. But say all that. That is my greatest fear. So when I read something about Paul being arrested and put in 2 chains and not getting even just because the crowd said so, that I think is my least favorite thing in all this. I would hate to be arrested without cause. I'd hate to be arrested, but I'd really hate to be arrested without cause. And then the next question is, which of these things would you like to hear said about you? That's a weird one, isn't it?
Well, they don't say it, but I mean, they're beating Paul because Paul is preaching the truth and they don't
That's
like
right.
it. But then they don't believe it's the truth either. So some of them are coming around and some of them aren't. So it's really an unknown for both of them, or for the crowd anyway. And then they're just falling in with the whole group. So I don't like being yelled at.
I think for me, my favorite thing would be if somebody accused me of bringing somebody that didn't belong into some place they belong, that they thought they didn't belong when it's obvious that they belong.
Yeah.
Right. The Jewish people were not meant to be. To me, they weren't meant to be exclusive. They were a chosen people, but they were chosen to be the light, right? And by doing so, bring other people. Just like we are chosen to be that light on the hill, right? And to me, I would like to be accused of bringing somebody to Christ who somebody else didn't think belonged. This Typhus guy, I think that I see. I've already forgotten his name because it's so weird. Trophimus. See, I was wrong. Anyways, Trophimus. I think that's what I would like. So we have this prophecy of Paul. Jesus says, you're going to suffer greatly. Agabus says, you go into this town, you're going to be bound up because your family on this belt. Now, whoever owns this belt. And he goes anyway. Do we have any, and I don't have an exact verse for this, so I'm just going to ask this out. Do we have any prophecies about us in our walk that are similar to Paul?
Mm-hmm.
Right?
They say that you're going to suffer for your faith.
Correct. It says you're going to, and it says what? One of the verses says, "Count it all what?
All blessings.
All blessings, all joy. Count it all joy when you are prosecuted before me." 1 Corinthians 11:1. Because we said this 2 weeks ago, or I said this 2 weeks ago, but I say a lot of things. We are not promised a life of comfort. We are, in fact, promised the opposite. And it says, and this is Paul writing this, obviously, and it goes, well, the verse, "For I'm not seeking my own good, but the good of many, so that they may be saved. Follow my example, as I follow the example of Christ." So, Paul wants us to follow his example. His example is a life of what? Comfort or not?
No.
Not. Because he follows Christ's example. Christ's life was an example of comfort or not?
No.
Obviously not. So we are not promised a life of comfort. I say this a lot. I say this every time, and I've already said it here once. Christianity thrives in persecution. I think as we see the way our country, our state, or whatever, our town, well, our town's pretty like a little bit of in the middle of another thing. Our town's a very weird place. I always tell people, they're like, explain Lubbock. I say, have you seen the show Cheers? It's like that bar, but a whole town. Like everybody knows your name, and everybody knows somebody else. There's like 2 degrees of separation. I come in this class, I know Nathan, you happen to be related to Nathan, right?
Yeah.
I'm like, well,
There you go.
I gotta watch what I say now.
Oh no, I know Nathan.
Or better yet, like I said, I was talking to somebody about something, and they're like, "Oh yeah, I met your sister," and I was like, "Oh, okay."
Okay.
I remember same thing in college, same sister actually, and they said, "Oh, you're Blah's brother." I'm not gonna rattle which one of my sisters, so you'll have to guess. You're Blah's brother. I'm gonna go, yes. And they go, she says you wouldn't approve of what she does, and I'm like, you're right. So I was then foreknown as the stuck-up kid in college, and my sister sowed her wild oats. Let's just say that. So I was like, when you have the last name McDuff, it's pretty easy to figure out who you're related to. In fact, one of my good friends, he's the cousin of one of my best friends growing up, and he moved here from, you know where El Campo is down there? He's a rice farmer. He was a rice farmer, now he's a doctor. But he came up here for his residency, and he was the cousin of a friend I grew up with, which is really weird. His grandma is a McDuff. They're not related. It's on the other side of the family. So we're actually we found out we're like second cousins or something like that. It's a really weird thing. And so, and there's the East Texas McDuffs, where the serial killer's from, and there's the West Texas McDuff, which is where I'm from.
Sure.
There is a McDuff, I think it was in the 70s, who in Texas, who kind of went to the chair. But anyways, so we're all going to be known for something. We're all following something, especially in Lubbock. You're going to be known. We're all interconnected, especially in the Church of Christ. We talk about people we know at different churches, especially when you go to like LCU, then you all end up at the same place.
Mm-hmm.
There's not a lot of this. For example, when I moved to Indianapolis, one of my friends, I think I've said this already, one of my friends' grandma went to church with me in Unicircle, California. The Church of Christ is a very small world, so people are going to know. Maybe not now, but they're going to eventually know who you are, and they're going to know who you follow. And so if we're supposed to follow Paul's example, who's supposed to follow Christ's example, so ultimately we're all supposed to follow whose example? Christ, right?
Mm-hmm.
And if we're supposed to count it all joy if we suffer on the account of Jesus, then this is not a fun lesson, y'all. This is in fact a very depressing lesson. We don't want to talk about persecution, right? We like comfort, we like our bubble. But it's going to change. Our comfort level is going to change, for better or for worse. And whether we think it's for worse, I think it's for better, because that's what we're promised. So like I said 2 weeks ago, we are judged on our choices. And so we all have a choice of how we're going to face this. Are we going to face it like Paul, which he says, I'm going to go anyway because that's what I'm supposed to do? Or are we going to do what I would do, which is say, this isn't my belly.
Yeah.
This is Doug's belly. Or I'm going to say, well, that's great. Antioch is still looking pretty good this time of year.
Well, or we just hide in our houses.
Right.
So that's easy to do.
Right. Now, I'll say this about hiding in our houses. I am not attributing COVID to persecution. There's a difference. I'm not telling you to just, laissez-faire and decide, say la vie and go outside and cough on people. I'm just saying that if we are living our life correctly spiritually, then we will be persecuted. Now, we might not be stoned and left for dead, but we will be persecuted. And we're supposed to be happy about that. This is fun. This is a good topic.
Mm-hmm.
The meditative question they have for me here is, the question is, what are you willing to do for Jesus? I don't expect to answer that question, because that is a hard question. We talked about this my first week when we had Luke's class in here. We talked about, we all say we would take a bullet for Jesus, or we would be persecuted for Jesus, but what if they attack our family, right? We don't like putting ourselves in that situation. We talk about, have you guys ever heard of He's a German priest, or he was a Lutheran priest in World War II. I can't remember his name now. Why am I thinking of von Braun? That's a rocket scientist. You guys know what I'm talking about? He wrote a lot of books. He died in a concentration camp, which I just found out there's 1,096 concentration camps in Nazi Germany. 6 of them were extermination camps, but there was actually 1,096 concentration camps or forces or whatever. I did not know that. Usually they just focus on Dachau or Auschwitz. And so he, I wish I could remember his name. Actually, it's on my Amazon list because I want to buy one of his books. And he was in this situation. And if you ever have a chance to read him, I recommend it. He actually tried to kill Hitler a couple times. And, or allegedly. That's how they got him into jail. So they said, there's also this amazing quote Hitler about how he's going to make Christianity the #1 religion in the world. He actually said that. Sounds like something Ronald Reagan would say, God bless his soul. But, sorry, I had a history teacher in high school that anytime you mentioned Ronald Reagan, you had to say God rest his soul. It was a Cold War history class. Mm-hmm. So it's just been, so now that's been ingrained in me. So I'm sorry, I wasn't trying to make a political statement or anything like that. Where's my book list? I'm so sorry. Dietrich Bonhoeffer.
There you go.
If you ever have a chance to read Dietrich Bonhoeffer, he was a really interesting guy. He wrote 2 books. One is The Cost of Discipleship, which is a really, really good book. And that's the one I'm trying to get when I have a chance. I'm reading another book right now, so when I switch to that one. I don't read a lot of religious books. I read a lot of history books. And so then another one is called Life Together, the Classic Exploration of Christians in Community. So this is a guy that had a radio show while in Nazi-occupied Germany and kept preaching the word. In fact, he was giving an interview at the time, and he started talking bad about Hitler and how, Christians shouldn't follow what Hitler has to say. Because, this is Nazi Germany. We're talking about that mob mentality, right? A lot of people, I would say a lot of good people got caught up in that, which, so he's talking about this, and he's being very critical of Hitler, which it's easy to be critical of Hitler today. Not so much in 1930s Germany. And they actually cut off the broadcast in the middle of it. So if you have a chance to read Dietrich Bonhoeffer's name, he's very interesting. And I think it's a good, it's a good look into what somebody in our current, I'd say, 20th century, what a persecution looks like to a modern day Christian. And so you get a chance. But again, not a rosy story, not a rosy day. I'm really sorry. The hits keep on coming. But all said, at the end of the day, it's worth it, right? Because that's what you have to make a decision on. Is all this worth it, right? Is going to work every day worth it? Why do we go to work every day, mm-hmm. right? We don't go to work every day because it's fun. Otherwise, it wouldn't be called work. People say, why did you go into accounting? And I said, because it pays the bills. You must really love accounting. I go, no, I tolerate accounting. But accounting pays for the other stuff. And I like the other stuff, right? And so why do we do it? Why do we continue this walk when we know that the end game is not going to be fun? That our promise, the only promise we have, not the only promise, I'm sorry, but one of the main promises we have is that we will be persecuted. And why do we do it? It's for the end goal, right? You got to keep our eyes on the prize. It's that you finish the race, you kept the faith. And so my encouragement is to focus on that end goal this week. You're going to see a lot. The media, Facebook, I don't know if you have TikTok, whatever TikTok is, if it's still around, they've outlawed it. I don't know what's going on anymore. Whatever platform you're on, if you're not Reddit, I don't know. Whatever platform you're on, heck, if you get a chain letter. My wife's grandma still sends, she's 94 years old, she still sends out these chain letters all the time. And I set up a super special rule for Mama Lee, and they just go into a folder, Mama Lee folder. Whatever you do, this week, you're gonna see something bad. You're gonna see something that makes you feel persecuted. a less than anything, you're gonna get it. And I encourage you to keep your eye on the goal and to try to count it all joy. Right. Anything else, comments, concerns? Happy? No, we're not, but that's okay.